Oh my gosh, that's a good fish.
That's a good fish.
Holy crap.
Hung up.
Oh my gosh. Oh, come off that tree.
Same one?
What's going on, guys? My name is Jeremy with Fishing Lone Star. Welcome back to the Monster Bass channel. Today we're talking swim jig versus swim bait, when you should throw each one, how, some of the techniques, the retrieval, the gear, and really what the differences are between the two. So let's dive in, talk about swim baits versus swim jigs. So first of all, if you've not yet subscribed to the Monster Bass channel, make sure you do that now because there's lots of great content coming your way, tips, tricks, on the water footage, some great catches. So make sure you subscribe right here to the Monster Bass channel. And if you have not yet as well, hop over to my channel, it'll be linked below, Fishing Lone Star. I try to highlight a couple of things there, and that's gear and tackle reviews, fishing tips and tricks as well, and weekly updates from Texas or the South region about what's working and what I've been doing to catch fish. So make sure you hop over to Fishing Lone Star and give me a follow or a subscribe. All right, let's dive in. I'm gonna start by talking about a little bit of what I used to do. All right, so in the past, I almost exclusively threw a swim bait instead of a swim jig. And quite honestly, I never really saw the need to throw anything other than an EWG hook on a swim bait. I didn't really understand why I probably should throw a swim jig in certain scenarios versus a swim bait. So we're gonna talk about that today. I'm gonna start with the swim jig and what I've learned about this particular lure. All right, first of all, that's something along the lines of what I normally throw. That's the Egg Zone Slammer, a 4-inch version on the back of a swim jig. And what I've learned about the swim jig is it really excels in shallower water, probably 5 feet or shallower. All right, so normally I'm throwing the swim jig in 5 feet or shallower water versus a swim bait, I'm throwing probably 5 feet and deeper. The reason why is because your smaller bait fish will oftentimes get up shallow, and Florida strain bass, if you're after largemouth, which is predominantly in what most species of largemouth bass are, that are Florida strain, like to get up shallow. Largemouth bass in general like to be shallow, like to get up there in sun, chase bait fish. The spawn is coming if it's not already here, and they like to bed there as well. So getting up shallow with a swim jig is really helpful. Now the swim jig itself, because you have the weed guard, really does well around lots of laydowns, timber, grass. You can pretty much bring this thing through anything just like you can a jig. So it makes it extremely versatile, all right? So I do like to throw it up shallow and around a lot of cover, structure, etc. Now, one thing I also really like to do with the swim jig is during my retrieval, I will shake or pump the rod quite a bit. Some people call it the Alabama shake. The reason why is because every time you do, it causes that skirt to kind of flare up in the water, all right? So you wanna look for a swim jig that will flare up in the water as you pump it or shake it. That's what I like to do in that retrieval, and I find that it gets me a lot of good and bigger fish when I'm using a swim jig with that type of retrieval. Now let's talk about the swim bait for a minute. One of my favorite to use is, again, the Egg Zone Slammer, but in this particular case is the 5.5-inch Mega Slammer. And I normally put that on a 5/0 to 6/0 EWG hook, depending upon the manufacturer. Sometimes a 5/0 and a 6/0 are the same size from different manufacturers. But I will obviously expose that, so I'll take that swim bait, pull it forward a little bit, bury the hook tip so that I have a nice, clean, buried hook. And I like to slow roll my swim baits. So literally I'll cast out, let that swim bait get a little bit deeper in the water column, almost to the bottom, and just a slow, steady retrieve. All right, so it's a slow retrieve. The beautiful thing about this particular swim bait is there's a big body roll and a big tail wag from that paddle tail on the end. So you don't have to reel it fast to get action. You can reel it pretty slow. And here's a couple of other things to think about. This past weekend I was on the water. There was a really high sun later in the day. So high sun, no clouds. Fish don't have eyelids. They're not looking up, they're likely looking down. So I put up the swim jig that I was using earlier in the morning up shallow when the sun was behind some clouds and fish were looking up, and instead went to the swim bait down bottom, deeper, heavier hook, slow roll on the bottom, and was way more productive with the swim bait in the afternoon and the swim jig in the morning. So two different lures, similar because they both have a swimming style, right? But completely excel in different times of the day. So just some things to think about as you're choosing between which of those two to throw. A couple of things I will also point out is the equipment I'm using. I'm using 20-pound fluorocarbon for both of them, mainly because a lot of the fisheries that I'm fishing in have more timber than they do lily pads. If I was fishing around more lily pads, I'd probably throw braid with both of these to cut through those pads. But you don't want to throw braid around timber because it will dig into the wood. You would rather have fluorocarbon for that. So I throw 20-pound fluorocarbon on both of those just because you have usually pretty thick gauge hooks that you're trying to set, so you need stronger line. On my bigger swim baits like this, I'm throwing a 7/6 extra heavy rod on the loose Super Duty. Now, you can throw a heavy rod, extra heavy rod, depends on, again, on the rod manufacturer. That's just what I use. And then on the swim jig, because I'm shaking this a lot to get that skirt to flare up, I want a light rod and a light reel. So for me, I use the loose Hyper Mag. All right, this particular rod is 4 ounces, the reel is less than 6 ounces, so combined, this setup is 10 ounces. Now that's just me because I use a swim jig a lot, so I have a dedicated swim jig setup. But you really just need a medium heavy to a heavy rod on a swim jig. You'll get by just fine with either of those. This is just my preference of a setup, but again, I'm throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon on this as well because I'm throwing it up shallow and around a lot of wood and timber. If I was throwing it in lily pads, I'd probably go again with braid. So that's a little bit of difference between the two. Both are highly effective. I recommend you definitely throw both. Don't be like me previously and just get stuck on a swim bait. Try both, the swim jig and the swim bait, but think about if fish are looking up and they're in shallower water, go with a swim jig. If fish are a little bit deeper or there's a high sky and they're maybe looking down, go with a bigger swim bait on bottom. And I think you'll find you'll have a lot of success with both of those two applications. All right, guys, that's gonna be a wrap on our conversation today about swim baits versus swim jigs. If you've got questions, drop them below. I would love to answer them because these are two techniques that I feel very passionate about. I use them a ton and catch a ton of fish. So drop your comments below. Make sure you subscribe right here to the Monster Bass channel for more great videos and fishing content coming your way. Also, if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the Monster Bass Bag. I personally am in the South region, so I get the regional pro box for the South. Love the baits that I get every month. Make sure you check them out. Make sure you subscribe to Monster Bass, the better bag, and get out and go catch a monster bass of your own.